the state is now facing is Florida. Senator Marco Rubio is with us. Senator, first, our prayers, our thoughts for all our fellow Americans, our Floridian friends. Sorry you're all going through this. This is a rough one. What do you know, especially about Southwest Florida? What happened, Naples, Fort Myers, et cetera, Sarasota?
Well, I think the reporting that preceded me here on the air kind of describes what the images we're going to begin to see tomorrow. We know that the storm surge was very significant, historic, really. And I think we're all going to be shocked by some of the images that are going to emerge. So one of the water gauges that measures up in Fort Myers was still pretty high as of an hour ago and rapidly rising. So there's still some threat there. And even as we're going to be dealing with that, we recognize that this storm is now moving inland. And now we move to a second kind of risk, and that is the flash flood. The National Weather Service has issued its highest alert possible. They're expecting upwards in some isolated areas of up to 12 inches of rain, but certainly 4 to 8 inches. So they're now talking about a real flash flood threat in many parts of Central Florida as this storm moves in the overnight hours. And the worry there, of course, is that it's overnight. Some people are going to be asleep, might be in the way of these flash flood advisories that are coming their way. But a lot of rain that's going to be coming in through Central Florida and all the way up through Northeast Florida. So tomorrow is going to be another terrible day in Florida for people in eastern Central Florida, all the way up through the northeast part of the coast. Even as we begin to see the images emerge tomorrow from Southwest Florida and the damage that was done there, these flash floods over the next few hours and into the early hours of tomorrow are nothing to play with. They're very significant. The threat is very high, probably the highest it's ever been, certainly that I can recall in such a wide swath area.
I know that there's been a lot of coordination between you, Governor DeSantis, Senator Rick Scott. You have literally mobilized every single agency within the state of Florida, preparing for this, knowing that it was likely going to be this bad. I was pretty impressed. I saw an AP picture today, and it had what looked like 3 or 4. Let's look at this poor guy swimming inside his living room. I mean, that home is probably going to have to be rebuilt. But you pre-positioned and staged all these electric company trucks are on standby literally to flood into Florida. I saw a picture, looked like 3 football fields worth of utility trucks ready to go in and make the repairs that'll be desperately needed in the days to come. That's pretty impressive staging and pre-positioning, I would say, for the state of Florida. We can show that big picture that I sent over earlier today.
Yeah, so part of it is now, as we're talking about earlier, on the early assessment that some of the utility companies are making, is that in some of these areas, the grid is not going to be repaired. It may have to be completely rebuilt, which, of course, is going to extend the time frame that that's going to take. That's a very serious threat. But you're absolutely right. I mean, Florida, unfortunately, because we've gone through many of these storms, has good systems in place. The governor's done a great job of organizing all that as well, the emergency management people up there. And look, FEMA's been very cooperative. They're going to come in and backfill whatever the state needs. But there's a lot of work to be done. We don't even know the full extent of it. It's going to be different in different places. You got to clear those roads. You got to get the crews in there. You got to save lives. You know, Lee County, their 911 system is completely down, being rerouted to Collier. They are getting calls that at this moment we still can't respond to because it's just not safe to get there. And you know, almost the entire county is out of power. We have multiple counties where there's virtually no power whatsoever. So we don't know some of the harrowing things that are going on right now. But these crews are ready to go, and we thank them. They're from all over the country. They're ready to go, but it needs to be safe before they can move in. And that's going to take at least another 24 to 36 hours before that work can even begin in most parts.
Now, we know that, let's say, weather forecasting is an imperfect science. Most models leading into today, and I'm not blaming anybody, everyone's doing the best job they can, had this storm hitting a little bit more north, more towards the Tampa area. It came in a little bit more southwest, and that being Naples, that being Fort Myers, that being Sarasota. But you still had 2.5 million people that were in the evacuation zone. That's a lot of people to move. In some of these areas, people did not evacuate, and my understanding is that there are requests out there looking for people. If you don't have any information about anybody that may be in trouble, as soon as they're able, they want to send them in. Do you know anything about those efforts?
Yeah, I mean, floridadisaster.org, if you go on that website, floridadisaster.org, you're going to be able to go to a site where part of it where you're going to be able to register, whether you're one of those people that stayed behind or you know someone that did, so that it gives the response workers a census they can begin to check on and get information about the households. Look, I think most people did leave. As you know, a lot of people know that part of our state is somewhat seasonal, so it doesn't have its full population, but there's still a lot of people there. A lot of people. Hopefully, many of them left. It sounds like most of them left. But there are these videos are coming from somebody. There are people who stayed behind. And right now, if you're in Lee County, or even Collier County, but especially Lee County, and you are trapped by water, there is no way to get to you. It's one of the reasons why they do these evacuation orders. You just got to hold on and do the best you can, because hopefully by some point tomorrow, those rescue crews are going to be able to come out and begin to respond. Conditions are still not safe. Once that happens, you're going to see something unprecedented. They're going to come by air, by boat. You know, we've got volunteer groups like the Cajun Navy
That's amazing.
that's ready to go. So they're great people, but they're ready to move. But they've got.
If anybody in this audience knows of somebody that didn't evacuate currently in an area and they can't get out, if you go to the website that Senator Rubio just mentioned, floridadisaster.org/info, and you input the name of the person and the address that the person is at, if they contacted you and said, this is really bad here and I can't get out of here, you can put their name and address on that website, and then rescuers will know exactly where to go to help them out. Those efforts, hopefully, Senator, can start tomorrow. Let's talk about other rescue efforts that are going to be needed here, and also the coordination as it relates to the federal government. You mentioned FEMA. I know the White House has been in touch with you and Governor DeSantis. What is the latest on their efforts to help?
Well, look, FEMA's pre-positioned. Everything the state has needed, FEMA's ready to provide as a backstop or to add on, because obviously the state has its own supplies. They're the primary responder, but at some point those are exhausted. And there may be things we need, like the Army Corps is ready to go to help with some of the power restoration. I talked to FEMA's director earlier this afternoon about help removing debris from the road so we can get people in. We'll need some of that heavy equipment. But the most important thing now, if he hasn't done so already, and I expect he will, is that the president will approve the major disaster declaration. I led the entire Florida delegation in sending a letter in support of the Governor DeSantis' request, because that will allow for individual assistance. Now, the individual who, for example, no longer has no home to go back to, will now be able to apply to FEMA and hopefully quickly get the assistance they need to find a place to live, to find a way to feed themselves while we work through this. And the same will be true for small businesses through the SBA. So I expect that declaration, if it hasn't been made, will come shortly. And that will open the door for that individual assistance. But I think it's really tough to tell you. We've seen the full assessment. Expect this, a tremendous amount of water damage, surge in Southwest Florida, a tremendous amount of flood damage in Central Florida, including agricultural areas and rural areas that there might be some people we don't even know are there yet because they didn't sign up beforehand and so forth. But a lot of people ready to help. The conditions have to be right, but when that happens, you'll see the help come.
And by the way, anybody around the country, I know Americans always step up and help their fellow Americans in need. They have set up a website that you can give donations to, obviously. It's floridadisasterfund.org is the official one. And again, if you know anybody that didn't evacuate, somebody that is trapped, you can go to floridadisaster.org/info, input the person's name and address, and rescuers know exactly where to go. I know this has been a busy day for you, Senator, and coordination and the preparedness seems to be as good as any I've ever seen. So we wish everybody in Florida the best. Our prayers are with you all.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks so much.
All right, Senator, thank you. Here with the latest update.